wonder what influences your decision making in the Christian life. Mark Dever, speaking about this passage, helpfully divides it into three. Firstly, liberty. Secondly, legalism. And thirdly, love. Liberty, legalism, and love. And those three factors are really helpful, and really, if we're honest, probably are the three dominating motivations behind each of the decisions that we make. Some people are led by liberty. They acknowledge, I'm free in Christ to do whatever I want, and so I will indulge in whatever I want. I'll not indulge in sinful practice, I know that's wrong, but other than that, I'm free in Christ, I'm liberated. Other people at the other end of the spectrum are not led by their liberty, but are led by legalism. They say, here are the strict boundaries through which I will live my life, here are the rules, here are the parameters that I and everyone else should abide by. And in this passage, Paul really says both approaches are wrong. Don't be led ultimately by your liberty. Don't be led ultimately by legalism. Rather, a better solution, Paul says, is to be led by love. Be led by love. Paul begins by speaking to those who are led by their liberty in verse 23, and he quotes that really well-known saying that we've already encountered in 1 Corinthians. It's this: all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. That's a phrase we've already encountered in Corinthians, and it appears to be a slogan that the Corinthians commonly used. It is to say that I can do anything, I'm free in Christ. And Paul says to this, in one sense you are right. Look what he says in verse 25 and 26. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question on the ground of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Paul says in one sense you're right to be led by liberty. God created all things and he created them for you to enjoy. So enjoy God's good gifts. But he says there is a better motivation than just being led by your liberty. And he says in verse 24, that is to be led by love. Let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbour. And so then Paul gives this little scenario of an occasion where you're maybe invited round to a non-believing friend's house for dinner, and they put before you meat which may have been previously offered to idols, this hot topic that the Corinthians have been dealing with, that we've been looking at in recent days. And the person who's led by their liberty will say, just tuck in, just eat the meat, it's absolutely fine. However, at this point, Paul says, no, don't eat the meat. And I'm sure as the legalistic person hears that, they think, yes, great, Paul, blanket ban on all meat that's been offered to idols, and maybe all meat in general. But that's actually not the Apostle Paul's motivation. Notice that he says here, do it not on the ground of your own conscience, verse 28, but for the sake of their conscience. In other words, Paul says, don't eat the meat, not because you're not free, not because you ought to be legalistic, but do it out of love for the person who's serving it to you. If they're a non-believer, you do not want them to be confused in thinking that, Christians just eat meat and are happy to associate themselves with gods of the foreign religions. They might just think that Christianity worships one God of many. And so he says, while you in of yourself are free to eat meat that has been offered to gods, in this context, like the other context that he's already shown us, maybe it's best to abstain from it. Not because of your own conscience, but because of the non-believer's conscience, for their benefit, out of love for them. And so Paul says, do not be led by legalism, do not be led primarily by your liberty, but be led by love. Here's your challenge for today. Which of those three categories do you find yourself being most led by? Legalism, liberty, or love? Why don't you pray that the Lord would help you to enjoy the gifts which he has given you, but to do all things and enjoy all things out of love for him and love for people. That really is the Apostle Paul's summary in this passage. Look from verse 31. So whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Hope you have a great day.